Hello. So I've already talked about Sydney Sweeney in a previous video that just came out right before this clip was out on this channel. I have some things more to say because more developments keep happening. First of all, a lot of you probably haven't seen the Sydney Sweeney thing, so let's briefly go over it. Here's the Sydney Sweeney ad in question. There are multiple of these, multiple video spots that she's done with American Eagle. The brand is American Eagle. This one was fascinating.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
What you've just seen is what everybody's discoursing about. She says genes are passed down from parents to offspring. Strange choice of words, right? Offspring. We'll get into that in a second. Like hair color, personality. Personality is not really passed down genetically. Like aspects that can influence personality, sure, but not personality itself. And eye color. My genes are blue. And she's showing her blue eyes on screen. She's doing so, yeah, again, with this very particular accent that is very Northwest and very played up to sound like quite ditzy and sexualized, honestly. Like if we're just calling a spade a spade. You can imagine what the discourse is like, right? The people who hate these ads can't fit into American Eagle jeans. Ooh. Well, somebody in marketing did a great job. She definitely has great genes. She's freaking gorgeous. This is a lot of right-wing folks, frankly. Like fat phobia, impeccable genes. People are saying this is racist. We have officially hit the peak dumbing down of society. This is it. I've lost hope. Take note, Jaguar. Some of these are like these kinds of accounts that don't even seem like they're real. Anyway, this is just like an obvious rage bait. Deja Sade did some reporting on Instagram. Great content creator, by the way, confirming that this is rage bait. So this is the Vice President of Marketing, Media, Performance, and Engagement for American Eagle. During a Zoom call with Sydney, we asked the question, how far do you want to push it? Without hesitation, she smirked a smirk and said, let's push it, I'm game. And there are just coy comments about how it infuses our personal cheeky energy and making us laugh as we envisioned how the world would experience the launch. The star power of Sydney and the double meaning behind the campaign has a culture-shaping power beyond anything I could have ever imagined being a part of. Just check your social feeds. So beyond even what is meant by culture shaping power and all of what the double meaning could be, aside from just the double entendre of genes and genes, there is an obvious emphasis on look at the reaction we're gonna get. They're doing that because they know that they're rage baiting, and they know that they're doing that with a specific advertisement that will appeal to right-wing audiences on multiple levels, as well as contain a dog whistle about genetics and genes that, frankly, at best it's poor timing. But with what we know about Sydney Sweeney in terms of her family apparently being associated with MAGA and her not stating her political affiliations, it doesn't necessarily lend to the idea first that she would be opposed voraciously to doing right-wing friendly content. Moreover, look at the people defending this. Ben Shapiro defending it. Everything is Hitler. Valuetainment defending it. Matt Walsh. American Eagle puts Sydney Sweeney in jeans and leftists in therapy. So these are the people defending your ad. Okay? And you apparently are happy about this. Said so in your memo that you put out to the world. Now I'm going to show you another ad.
Look, I didn't ask to be the king of summer. It just kind of happened. This tan? Genetics. I just got my color analysis back. Guess what? Golden summer. Literally. I can't help it. Every time.
So this is Gavin Castellano, right? And he's an Italian-American actor who's in this show called The Summer I Turned Pretty. There has been controversy a little bit in the past because Gavin Castellano's social media accounts apparently were liking Jordan Peterson videos and a very right-wing coded TikTok, but he said it wasn't him. Okay. And there's rumors, people are saying that him and his cast members don't seem to be getting along or have tension because of what might be Gavin Castellano's views. Whatever. Same category of Sydney Sweeney. Apolitical, but seems to be right-wing based off of rumors. Actor with light hair and blue eyes talking about their genetics and advertising. And again, why? First of all, this tan genetics, right? What do you mean? You're white. Everybody tans. Your skin is burnt to a degree, so you have a tan. I don't even understand like what the genetic advantage of that might be. You're more sensitive to the sun. Like I don't really understand even why that line would need to be there. It's not even self-deprecating. Oh, this tan that I have is genetics. Like you're a white guy. What are you talking? I don't understand it, guys. But I do understand that it's a very clever dog whistle. And it's something that will engender a certain response. It'll engender leftists going like, hey, it's weird that you white folks are going in commercials and saying, look at my great genes that I have with my skin color and my eye color and my hair color. Look at how great they are. It's weird. It's not advertisements where it's like multicultural, diverse actors and actresses all talking about their genetics in ways that, talk about, what bring us together. That's the kind of advertising we're used to like 5-10 years ago. And yeah, it's facetious. We don't believe that these multi-billion-dollar corporations actually care all that much about racism. But this is what they would do to make advertising campaigns that stand out to people and that appeal to people. Now it's clear that instead of trying to appeal to a wide demographic, they're interested in triggering people. They're interested in getting leftists to critique their advertisements and then getting the right wing to pile in. American Eagle went up 15% on the stock market after that advertising campaign went out, apparently. Possibly, I don't know why. It might have been a meme stock surge because of right-wingers buying up the stock to bring the price up. It might have just been unrelated. But they're looking at it as a strategic way to play off of the political divide. And this is the kind of white ambiguity that I was talking about, except now it's getting less and less ambiguous. It's like they're going to keep pushing this button. Maybe they can say in the case of Sydney Sweeney's advertisement that it worked. Look at all the people that paid attention. But how much more can they do this before people just kind of go, okay, it's obvious you're baiting. Like rage bait only works for a certain period of time before people figure out, oh, you're rage baiting, so I'm not going to give you rage. That said, there's a great breakdown of exactly what this kind of rhetoric has to do with eugenics, which, if you don't know, is essentially this idea developed in the late 19th century of like selective breeding of human beings to breed out any kinds of weaknesses or imperfections. Read non-whiteness, disability, sexuality, strength, all these kinds of things.
One of which is positive eugenics.
Great genes.
And negative eugenics.
Forced sterilization of black women in the 70s, of Puerto Rican women in the 60s and 70s, etc. In the United States, or by the United States.
The moral question, of course, becomes who gets to decide whose traits are positive and whose traits are negative. So if you want to know more about how positive eugenics happens, you need look no further than Fitter Families contests in this country in the 20s and 30s and even 40s, I think, where people were encouraged to bring their very white, able-bodied families, and at the same time at a fair that you could, let's say, show off your giant pumpkin or your prize-winning pig, you could show off and get an award for your fit family. And in terms of negative eugenics, the people who did those things in World War II didn't come up with those ideas. They were inspired by American and British eugenicists.
I'm going to pause or stop the video there just because I want to encourage you to watch the TikTok for yourself after this and follow that creator. It's great work. The first point that I want to make is, what harm does this do? What harm does it do that white people, because now it's multiple, now it's also Gavin Castellano or whatever, what is the impact of them advertising themselves as having great genes? I want to ask first and foremost, what product is American Eagle selling through these Sydney Sweeney advertisements? Do we know what it is? It's jeans, right? Denim, right? For who? Advertisement intends to connect an audience with a product, to target an audience. So Sydney Sweeney, who is a very popular actress, especially among young audiences because she was part of Euphoria, which was very popular among young adults and teens. She has a very large demographic of people that love her and that are kids, teens, young adults. And a lot of them are women. Mostly they're women. So this is Sydney Sweeney Daily. It would seem to be actually a Stan account. See, it lists her upcoming projects. does the memes. It's just a stan account, okay? You know what these look like now. We've had them around for a while. And the people running the account are posting the ad and saying, oh my God, right? And then seeing the negative response takes up, as a proper stan does, to defend Sydney Sweeney. Remember when Jeremy Allen White did that campaign? Remember the men's underwear bearing campaigns? And no one complained. All the women were in love with them. But if Sydney Sweeney does it, she should be burned at the stake for setting back feminism, right? So what you're doing is you're making these fans, which, by the way, we know that stan pages are often operated by people who work for a celebrity now. That's something that's been reported on multiple times. So it's quite possible that this is her team doing it. You're seeing these accounts taking up in defense of Sydney Sweeney from a specifically like pro-woman supposedly standpoint. Like, you're targeting women and you're telling women like, hey, there's nothing wrong with this advertisement, right? And their fans, often young impressionable women, are defending it too. But again, what's the negative aspect here? What impact does this have? Well, let's also talk about who, again, is the main demographic defending this advertisement and showing their support for it, right? Take a look at the comments. The people who hate these ads can't fit into American Eagle jeans. Somebody in marketing did a great job. This guy named Tom Cotton. This woman is enjoying her life in easy mode. This Sydney Sweeney is gorgeous. The people complaining about this are absolutely mental. We'll keep going. Well, I wasn't sold on the idea that the ads were racist until I looked at the comments and saw how many racists there were defending it. Okay? You know, people are pointing out very racially coded, fatphobic, right-wing commenters, often men, Edward Joseph, Tom Cotton, are defending this advertisement for women's jeans, showing their support for this advertisement for women's jeans. Why would you target men, including right-wing men who are not very inclusive of multiple demographics? Why are you targeting them intentionally to support your advertisement when they don't even use that product? They don't wear women's jeans, we presume. But again, what negative impact does this have? Okay, you're targeting a certain audience. Well, they like it, they don't like it. Okay, so picture yourself as a young woman, 16, 17, 18 years old, maybe 13, 14, 15, maybe 11, 12. Some of y'all are young women in that age range. Picture yourself as somebody who is not politically engaged, like most people are. Picture yourself as somebody who is bullied, who is very self-conscious of their appearance, as many young people are, especially young women, with how much beauty standards are imposed on them. And you like Sydney Sweeney. Picture not only the impact seeing this advertisement might have on you in terms of what it will take for you to be beautiful and where you are in the pecking order, where you are in the hierarchy of who's cool, who's beautiful, who has great genes and who doesn't. Picture what kinds of things you might do to compensate for your not so great genes if you simply take what the advertisement is saying at face value. Because the advertisement isn't saying we all have great genes. It's saying Sydney Sweeney has great genes. Picture the influence that would have on you. And it becomes very clear not only how irresponsible and bizarre and unsettling it is that they are purposely targeting right-wing audiences with hateful views to defend this advertisement and purposely trying to upset left-wing critique. But picture what kind of impact it has and why they might want that impact to be had. Eugenics is something that emerges in these capitalist societies in the 19th and 20th centuries as a particular interpretation of science that eases or redirects the concerns working class people, regular people have with capitalist crises. There's not enough money. I can't afford to live. I don't have health insurance. I'm injured. All these things, redirecting it towards wanting to excise certain people from society, hating certain people. The same way we see this anti-immigrant rhetoric right now. That's the way it's always been deployed. And frankly, there's a really obvious overlap. You remember this? Do you remember when Donald Trump talked about how immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country? Do you remember when he said in October, many of them murdered far more than one person and they're now happily living in the United States? You know, now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes. And we got a lot of bad genes in this country right now. Do you think that was unintentional? Do you think that that's just a coincidence? Do you think it was a coincidence when Donald Trump at a rally in Minneapolis or in Minnesota told the audience, the mostly white audience, you guys have good genes. You guys have a lot of good genes. Do you think that that's unintentional? Do you think that that's not signaling eugenics policies? Do you think when they put out executive orders saying that they can institutionalize people, get them off the streets if they clearly have some type of encumbrance to their mental health, do you think that that's unintentional? Do you think that that's not related to eugenics? And do you think when it's clear that the billionaire classes support MAGA, or at the very least quietly go along with MAGA and benefit from MAGA, and are now signaling MAGA messages in their commercials, MAGA-friendly commercials, with responses that are highly positive from MAGA people, do you think it's a coincidence that they would do that? As they tell you, I don't know, man, we were really excited because we said we were going to push the envelope. We expected this response from social media, but it was beyond our wildest dreams. Do you think when marketing executives are saying that out loud, that it is somehow not that deep still? That somehow an advertisement simply has nothing to do with white supremacy? That it's just simply the wokes overreacting as they usually do? But that's the thing. We've been overreacting, quote unquote, years and years and years on end. And then everything that we say is going to come true keeps happening. Keeps happening. Leftists overreacted about Gaza. Overreacted over and over again about demanding a ceasefire, pressuring politicians, arms embargoes, etc. And now look at the unified consensus within the establishment Democratic Party. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton tweeting about the need for humanitarian aid. Establishment Democrats talking more and more about, the problems with Netanyahu. Look at what's happening. So today, it's going to be Sydney Sweeney, wink, wink, I have great genes. And tomorrow, the more and more people just settle with this and say, it's not that deep. Well, she is pretty. Well, it could mean this, this, and this. The next day, it's going to be, you know what? I like seeing other people that look like me. From a white person in an audience, which I am realizing actually kind of happened because Billie Eilish did a concert in Ireland just recently and told the audience it's really crazy to be in a place where everyone looks like me. Which I don't understand what's going through her head when she says that. But they'll start harping on that in advertisements. More and more overt Nazi messaging in advertisements. I didn't even show you the full, more of the ad campaign beyond just that great genes one. But look at this other one that's included in here. Showing off her body, da-da-da.
Hi, I'm Sydney, though, and I'm available for the American Eagle.
Look at this. This is an American Eagle ad. She has great genes. Look at the car. Look at what happens with the car. She's doing turns in the car. Gas guzzling vehicles. Climate change. Do you not see it? It's right there. But it's not that deep, though. It's not that deep, though. Every single time, folks keep making all these very clear connections that become clearer and clearer with time. Critiquing advertisements, critiquing media. And people just say, it's not that deep, it's not that deep. You have it's not that deep yourself into the situation. That's what you have done. It's still not squarely our fault because this is clearly being imposed. I don't think the majority of people actually want this. And I don't think it's their choice for this to happen. I don't think this is a reflection of popular will. I think this is a reflection of corporations and the elites recognizing capitalist crisis and coming down hard on eugenics messaging because it's necessary for them to stomp out right away that climate refugees should not take up our resources, that there should not be any equality in the divisions of labor, that we should not have any ownerships of the means of production. Because if they don't start stomping this shit out fiercely right now and making us scared and making us ambivalent, then the more and more that these capitalist crises accelerate, and it's your job that you no longer have, and it's your neighborhood that is devastated by hurricanes, and it's our country and this other country and this other country that is filled with different migrant refugees who have nowhere to go because their part of the world, their city that they lived in is now underwater. When that's happening, our natural human instinct is to say, those people should have homes. There are homes here. Obviously, if they need to stay, they can stay. Diversity is good. These are things that are normal for us to say. We've been cooperating with each other in human society and before human society for a long time. We need to be beaten out of our humanity. We need to be beaten out of our natural proclivity to want to help people. And that's what they're doing. And the more that we accept that tacitly, the more they're going to keep doing it, right? It is crucial that you embarrass these people. It is crucial that you make them afraid to step out of the house sometimes. It is crucial that you criticize them voraciously. It is crucial that you criticize celebrities. It is crucial that you criticize media industries. It is. It just is. You know why? We can tell because the right wing has been doing it over and over again. And look, some of their demands are being met. And look what goes along with their demands being met. Political change. Inequality that benefits them. Particularly the ruling classes. They pay attention to this stuff. But we're not going to because there are more important issues? Are you kidding me? These are all the same issue. All the same issue. Because I get it, people are scared and they want to focus on the right things. But this is the same exact rhetoric. Immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. Look at the policy implications here. Do you know how much more COVID prevention we could have done? Do you know how easily it would have been done for the governments to provide air filtration, to provide masks and tests at low to no cost, to promote vaccines and a vaccine availability? Do you know how easy it would have been for them to have prevented so many deaths and so many people getting sick? But they let it happen. Do you know why? Because it's a test. Because that's the direction they need to keep pulling in. They need to keep pulling in necropolitics, in politics of death. They have to push these things. If they don't push these things, then it's going to be harder and harder for them to maintain status quo. And this, of course, is related to capitalism. The idea that rich and famous people, or I guess Sydney Sweeney might not be that rich. I don't know. I don't think a lot of actors and famous people are actually as rich as we think they are. But regardless, extremely successful people are pedestaled because they are reflections of the meritocratic nature of the society that you live in. It used to be that celebrities were often more outspoken because in their heart of hearts, they were truly artists and they were truly interested in society. And that was the place they were coming from. Athletes, same thing. People who came from poor backgrounds, who just loved doing sports. The biggest athletes in the world used to be people like Jackie Robinson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, anti-racist activists, Bill Russell. It used to be Diego Maradona, who was an avowed socialist. The biggest celebrities in the world, the biggest artists in the world. It used to be people like Marlon Brando, who was an outspoken advocate for indigenous rights and the civil rights movement. Also had a lot of flaws, a lot of problematic stuff. I do not endorse Marlon Brando as a person. But he was an activist, a woke activist. People like Muhammad Ali, people like Harry Belafonte, Nina Simone. We used to have those folks as like, oh, these are famous folks. These are famous people. To the point where even a lot of other celebrities would do like pared down versions of activism to be like, let me kind of get some of that shine too. Or they were just pressured into doing it by the presence of these celebrities. Now it's just normalized for people to be like, celebrities is not that important. Oh, they should just focus on acting. They should just focus on their jobs. If you're an actor and your job is acting, then pray tell, why is it so important that they should just do advertisements and we should be okay with that? Or just let that go without critiquing it ever? Like, these are the same people who will say, you know, just who cares what athletes think about politics? But you let them sell you iPhones and sports gear, Nikes. You let them sell you food, Subway sandwiches. That has nothing to do with whether or not they're good at basketball. But you let them do it. But the moment that they're like, hey, people should do something about genocide, you're like, these athletes should shut up. And the moment that young folks who have had a lot of political mobility taken away from them or obscured from them over the decades, the moment that folks go on social media and say this celebrity should do something, this celebrity should speak up, this celebrity should use their platform, bare minimum shit, okay? Nobody's asking Sydney Sweeney to be Harry Belafonte or Sabrina Carpenter, who I talk about in a previous video, to be Nina Simone. But the moment you ask them, hey, can you say something about genocide? Everybody's like, oh, whoa. Why are you demanding that this person who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars every year by being pretty and dancing and singing, why are you suggesting that they should care about people dying in a foreign country? Why are you suggesting that they should care about politics? Why are you suggesting that they should share your politics? I don't know, because I believe in them. And I think other people should too. And I think we should raise education and activate people to do this. And they also do the classic deflections of, oh, well, you're talking about this, but you're not talking about this. So now we're in a situation where you've made it cool for celebrities to do blatant right-wing propaganda. And there's no, oh, she should just stick to acting. There's just a continuous effort to be like, this isn't political. This is fine. Everything's fine. Everything is not fine. We're going to be spending the whole year unpacking how not fine everything is. That is going to be the focus at this point, because it's going to be clearer and clearer to you. You can deny it or you can start noticing. I'm seeing more and more people starting to notice, like, geez, like everything from the way tariffs are impacting the already exacerbating cost of living crises to noticing what's happening in Gaza. More and more people are like, holy crap, like things are really bad. And the longer that you keep dismissing valid, important political critiques, the longer that you're going to be like actively facilitating for these agendas to stay in power or to build power. They don't benefit off of you agreeing with them. They benefit off of you not caring. In Nazi Germany, a lot of people, if you ask them personally, would have said, I don't have a problem with the Jews. I don't have a problem with like Romani people. I don't have a problem with people with disabilities, but I don't get into politics. You had celebrities in Nazi Germany, not very many, because they had a series of different ideological conflicts and also created a lived in a very different political economic situation to where celebrity culture and consumerism was not what it is now. But the Nazis still recognized the importance of having actresses that they paraded around. Joseph Goebbels, there was a famous actress who I think was Swedish that he posed with. It was very important that they had neutral actors and neutral celebrities working with them. And they actually had to fear real reprisal. But I can't be mad that Sydney Sweeney is just blatantly doing eugenics propaganda because celebrities are not important. Celebrities are not important. If celebrities aren't important, then why do I keep being pushed conversations and engagements with celebrities every single day? If celebrities aren't important, then why do I walk down the street and see celebrity advertisements everywhere? And I turn on the TV and I see celebrity advertisements all over the TV. If celebrities aren't important, then why are celebrities being given millions of dollars to carry out advertising campaigns and to do all types of different marketing, or to generate millions and millions and billions of dollars for large corporations? If celebrities aren't important, then why are the ruling class making them so important? It can't just be, you have to think deeper than just, it's a distraction. It doesn't matter how lefty you think you are. It's not always just a distraction. It's not always just don't pay attention. Sometimes it's pay attention because this is a clear part of their agenda. And this stuff is going to age poorly. It might take 2 years, 3 years, it might take 5 years. A lot better artistic stuff has aged poorly from the past 10, 20 years. Sneaker Night by Vanessa Hudgens has aged poorly, and that song requires a little bit of musicianship. Do you think that once this massive fascist wave has finally blown over and devastated so many lives in its wake and left a legacy that we're going to be grappling with for the rest of our lives, do you think that people are going to be looking at the Sydney Sweeney ad and being like, yeah, that wasn't political? Do you really think that? And I urge people not to just only focus on celebrities. That is when we get over the top. But the purpose of the series that I'm doing about pop culture politics in Trump's America, the purpose of that is to make people make those connections. Allow yourself to become educated, not only about history, but about the people around you and what's happening to them through discourse about a very right-wing advertisement. Allow that to happen. I don't know how we will even recover. People have recovered from really, really devastating things throughout the course of humanity. It's happened because nothing lasts forever, and fascism in particular doesn't last that long. Fascism is a period of time that the ruling class lets its attack dog out so that people fear asking for a crumb. and leave devastation in their wake. That's what fascism has played a role as historically. And if we look at several other unbelievable atrocities that have been committed by ruling classes over the past centuries, they ended. But legacies continue because nothing ever ends and nothing ever really begins. Everything is always just working off of things. I'm not going to get too dialectical, but this is a thing that we have to remember. You have to think there's going to be a time that this is over. What am I going to do in the meantime? And that's why it's really important that we critique celebrities. It doesn't have to be the focus of your work. It doesn't have to be something that you get really up in arms about. But yes, it is important where you shop. And yes, it is important what celebrities you support. And yes, it is important that celebrities get pushed farther and farther to becoming progressive forces, because that's what they should be. There's no damn way you should be getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to put a ball in a net, and I have to worry about what your political opinions are because, oh gosh, you're so busy. There's no reason you should be getting paid millions and millions of dollars to make pop music in a room with other pop musicians and to be praised for how pretty you are and how good you are at singing, and also not have any interest in humanity. There's no way those two things should exist. You benefit off of humanity more than almost any other job does. We're not talking about people who work 12 hours a day in a kitchen, 16 hours a day in a kitchen. We're not talking about underwater welders. So damn right we should be critiquing celebrities. And this is a point that I keep trying to make to people. Now, something else I want to kind of chime in on while we're talking about genetics is the fact that eugenics is discussed as something that is new but not actually that new. I was listening to this podcast earlier today. It was an interview with a scientist who was critiquing eugenics as a concept and discussing the history of it. But I turned it off within the first few minutes because the guy, a white guy as you can presume, said something along the lines of, well, eugenics kind of isn't new. And actually, pre-eugenics, there was something that existed that was essentially what eugenics is. Now, eugenics is just the step that was taken in the 19th century with capitalism to pseudoscientifize a concept that had already existed. And he says these things about like, yeah, there's evidence anthropologically in pre-modern societies of selective human breeding and of these kinds of ideas of we need the strongest warriors or we need the gene pool a certain way. They didn't have the terminology like gene pool, but they would breed with certain people to get certain results in their children. And my problem with this is, first of all, the citations given were in Sparta, some things that some ancient Greek people said, and in Rome. Now, for those of you in the audience, I want you to connect something. I want you to guess why I might be a little bit annoyed that whenever we talk about pre-modern societies and things existing in pre-modern societies, people only talk about Rome and Greece. I want you to guess as to what the problem might be there in terms of making those assumptions. Let me take a sip of water while you do that. Also, there are frogs saying hello. If you see one, say hello. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Eurocentrism. There you go. There's this thing that we do where we only talk about Europe and certain European societies, and specifically in a certain period of time, and use that as anchoring our knowledge of pre-modern societies. Like, that's the start of culture, as Thaddeus says. Now, this person was critiquing eugenics. This person would consider themselves left-leaning on the issue, perhaps. This person was trying to talk to us about how bad eugenics is and how much of a dirge it is. But their explanation was one of, well, it's kind of like something humans do. And I really need white folks to stop doing this. Not because it isn't true to a degree, but because it's also not quite as true as they think it is. And it also de-emphasizes the importance that capitalism plays in all of these systems, in all of these things occurring as they are occurring now. Because it wasn't eugenics what Spartans did. Spartans had a specific society that what we would constitute as super right-wing now, but was also, based in a warrior class and establishing its population as having a warrior class. It was also a society that was constantly under attack, right? And even things like inbreeding among the elites, or things like choosing certain partners for their what would be considered a socioeconomic status, like these are not the same as eugenics. They are often quite related or bad in many ways, but they're not eugenics. Eugenics is a choice, just like fascism is a choice of capitalism and of liberal capitalism. And just to kind of give you an alternative narrative, there's a paper that I was easily able to find from Ojaku Musenze in 2019 talking about how disability, first of all, is not a term that would have existed in that time, but there is evidence that in many different periods of time, in many different societies on the African continent, there were ways that people who we would consider as disabled were treated that incorporated them into the society. This passage says, African spiritualism inherently glorified and or approved disability. In ancient Kemet, physical disabilities or body deformities were considered as divine spiritual attributes granted to humans by the gods. Remember that ancient Egypt was also a quite diverse society. Just before anybody gets into the realm of when they give you that rhetoric of only monoethnic societies work, right? Ancient Egypt was around. Let's just, we're just gonna do a quick Google. How long was ancient Egypt around? Oh, that would look like 3,000 years. I'm no ancient Egypt specialist or anthropologist. I'm just saying. And I found another paper about this in South Africa, pre-colonial African societies, right? The concept of disability as understood today, and I'm going to give you the name of this after. They also cite this paper, the same paper. The concept of disability as understood today did not exist in pre-colonial Africa. Rather, various terms described different forms of non-normative body minds. Disability was not always perceived as a handicap, and persons with disabilities were accepted and well integrated into their communities, where their human value was not negated by their disabilities. Many indigenous societies in Asia and Latin America view disability through symbolic and spiritual lenses, frequently linking it to special skills or divine intentions. In South Africa, pre-colonial Khoisan communities coexisted with persons with disabilities and utilized their own psychosocial health practices. So, all of this is just to make a quick point, and an important point, that not that, Africa was woke and then capitalism, the Europeans came and then turned Africa woke or unwoke. Not to say that there wasn't tremendous variation in how societies that existed for tens of thousands of years across all different places looked at, having offspring, having children, and looked at what qualities were desirable and what weren't desirable, and looked at potentially selective human breeding practices. The point is that the reason we use the term eugenics is because it does describe a specific thing. It was a term used in a positive light by people who created it to describe that specific thing. And that is the idea that the gene pool, which we understand to be a scientific phenomenon, is something that could have positive and negative traits, and that intervention should be made at a state level, but of course oriented by and empowered by the society that state governs, to weed out, to work out bad qualities in the gene pool and to highlight good ones. And it's pseudoscience. It doesn't make any sense. And it's also important to realize that throughout human history, capitalism is a very small part of human history. Throughout human history, plenty of different societies have recognized at the very least the importance of diversity. Diversity as something that means everybody has a different place depending on how they are. Maybe they have certain things that are difficult for them to deal with, challenges in certain respects, but also on the other side of the coin can be ways that they are good at certain things, or maybe they are just good at certain things by happenstance. So none of this is a natural human phenomenon, and that's what's so insidious about eugenics and about the rhetoric about good genes, right? Even aside from how this Sydney Sweeney advertisement and this Dunkin' Donuts advertisement is appealing to right-wing audiences in these very quote-unquote subtle ways. Putting that aside and putting aside the impact that has on young women, that the impact that has on young people that they are selling these things to, putting aside what that implicates about Sydney Sweeney and this Gavin guy, putting aside what that implicates about where we're at as a society, this idea of you got good genes, it's a weird thing that we've got to be really critical of. It used to be a very normal thing to say, and it isn't quite as much now. And advertisements like this seek to normalize it, to re-normalize it, because that's what conservatism is about. Bring some old stuff back. Doesn't matter what kind of negative impact the old things had. I like the old ways better. Why? Because I didn't live in the old times, or I did, and I had good memories associated with it, even though it was worse in a lot of ways, right? But the idea like, oh, you've got good genes. Like, if you're a mixed race person like myself, you will know what I'm talking about when I say people will sometimes assess you as an outcome of your parents and be like, wow, those genes that you have, you've got good genes. You've got Asian and Latino genes. Wow, that's great. Or that's bad, in certain cases. This is the kind of thing that we have to be very thoughtful about. And don't let anybody come into the conversation and tell you you're making it too deep, you're overthinking it. That's usually a sign that you're onto something. Sometimes we do overthink things. But when we're having conversations that are critical, as long as we're doing it from a perspective of being empathetic for people, and as long as we're doing it from a perspective of like being open-minded, learning, adapting to new information, yes, think deeply. That's what this is for. That's what these realms are for. We think and we process information, and then we figure out what to do about them. And that is the big takeaway. What do you do about this? Somebody in our chat talked about that earlier on, saying, as a disabled person, like, what do I do about this? I was going to get into like also a passage from Exhausted of the Earth, my favorite book right now, about resilience and resilience science, which is this whole large domain within science right now that props up the idea of resilience as something to examine and something to nurture in people, because we're trying to train people to be resilient and to be able to deal with bad circumstances so that we can justify continuously creating those bad circumstances, right? The ruling class is doing that, right? But what I want to say is that through collective action, all of this shit gets beat down. This is just the reality. Through collective action, these things get beat out of our society. If we stand up on things and we organize and we read how to organize, a lot of this stuff will lose power. A lot of this stuff is also impressing upon you that it is more powerful than it actually is. And it will signify to you how much violence it will do to you to try to maintain that power that it supposedly has. And so the first thing is, yes, critical thinking. Overthinking, like I've mentioned, sometimes is the necessary part of it. But collective action is taking that thinking, that studying, that research, that critical examination of everything, and making assertions, observations about what we can do, what has been done to build power before, and what can be done in the future. And I just want to give as an example something that you can watch in my video about solidarity. Solidarity is supposed to be hard, which Nelly was also a big help with that video. In that video, I read a book by the professor Nathan DeFord. In Nathan DeFord's book, he talks about how collective labor organizing in Canada ensnared LGBTQ plus rights. And this is such an important thing to continue to highlight, and that I will continue to highlight moving forward, because we love to treat it like these are separate things. Like there's just woke, and then there's bread and butter issues. Like there's identity politics, and then there's economic politics. Like there's the economy, and then there's culture, right? But from a standpoint of understanding anything about disability, anything about disability rights, first and foremost, anybody can become disabled. Anybody can be considered disabled. That's just the reality. If you look at human history for 2 seconds, that's a reality. The Jews were considered disabled in Nazi Germany. Jewish people were considered disabled in Nazi Germany. They were considered subhuman. In Gaza, bombs are dropped that decapitate people's limbs. People's limbs are shot and by riot police in the United States. People are becoming intentionally disabled. COVID-19, the way that ransacked communities, despite the resources being there to prevent that, they can make you disabled. So just from that standpoint alone, even if you're like, I'm not a disabled person, I don't think I'm a disabled person, I don't see how disability has anything to do with me. And I don't see how unionizing is going to help me at all, or help disabled people at all. It's an important issue for every single person, including at the workplace. And frankly, centering on the workplace. Unionizing efforts can ensnare rights for people, coverage for people, protection for people who are disabled or become disabled. That is a key thing that unionization has accomplished in societies and that it will continue to accomplish, and that can be voraciously emphasized. That's just one example of how collective organizing does this. And people are doing unionization efforts throughout the United States right now, and that is part of why, again, they are pushing this individualism on us. They are pushing these old conservative ideals on us. They are trying to separate us as hard as possible, because in response to these economic crises, more and more people are realizing the importance of working with their neighbor. More and more people are realizing the importance of collective organizing and collective bargaining. And they have to do everything in their power to make sure that doesn't happen, especially given the crises that are to come. So just a couple of quick thoughts on that at the end to give you some perspective on what this relates to with everybody and what can be done about it. And I hope you've enjoyed this stream. That's it for today.